They didn't start by disrespecting you. They started by testing you, a small comment, a subtle dismissal. A boundary crossed so quietly you almost didn't notice. And you let it slide. You told yourself it wasn't a big deal. Maybe you were being too sensitive, but here's what you didn't realize. They were studying you. Their brain was watching to see what you would tolerate, what you would ignore, what you would let pass without a word. And when you stayed silent, when you laughed it off, when you over-explained why it bothered you, you taught them something. You taught them exactly how far they could go. And they will go further, not because they're bad people, but because that's how human psychology works. People don't decide to respect you based on who you are. They decide based on what you allow. Let's talk about why this happens. Your brain doesn't immediately know where someone's boundaries are, so it tests, it pushes slightly, it makes a borderline comment. It crosses a small line, and then it waits. If you respond with calm firmness, with a subtle but unmistakable signal that says that's not okay, the brain registers it. It recalibrates, and respect is established. But if you don't respond, if you smile through discomfort, if you stay silent to avoid conflict, the brain learns that this boundary doesn't exist, that you can be pushed. And once that pattern is established, it's almost impossible to reverse without confrontation. Here's what most people miss. Disrespect isn't usually intentional. It's behavioral. It's subconscious. Most people who disrespect you aren't trying to hurt you. They're simply responding to what you've shown them is acceptable. You've trained them, without realizing it, that your boundaries are negotiable. Let me show you how this plays out. You're at work. A coworker asks you to cover their shift. You don't want to, but you say yes because you don't want to seem difficult. Then they ask again, and again. Suddenly, you're the person they always ask because you always say yes. They're not thinking about whether it's fair to you. They're thinking about what's easy for them, and you made it easy. Or maybe it's a friend who makes jokes at your expense in front of others. The first time, you laughed. You didn't want to seem uptight, but now it's a pattern. Now every time you're together, you're the punchline. And when you finally say something, they act shocked. They say you're too sensitive. They say it's just a joke. But it wasn't just a joke, it was a test. And you failed it by not setting a boundary, or maybe it's family. A parent who constantly criticizes your choices, your job, your partner, your lifestyle. And you keep explaining yourself, you keep trying to make them understand, but they don't, because respect doesn't come from explanation. Respect comes from boundaries, and every time you over-explain, every time you defend yourself, you're communicating that their opinion holds power over you. You're signaling that their approval matters. And people don't respect what they have power over, they respect what they can't control. This is why silence, over-explaining, and being nice backfire. Those responses don't communicate boundaries, they communicate flexibility. They communicate that you're willing to tolerate discomfort to avoid conflict. And once someone sees that, the dynamic is set. And here's the dangerous part. Disrespect doesn't stay small, it escalates. Once someone learns they can cross one boundary without consequence, they'll test the next one, and the next one. And before you know it, you're in a situation where you feel completely disrespected, but you can't pinpoint when it started. It started with the small thing, the thing you ignored. The thing you told yourself wasn't worth addressing, but it was. Because that small thing set the tone for everything that followed. Every boundary you don't defend becomes permission to cross the next one. And the worst part, you start to internalize it. You start to believe that maybe this is just how people treat you. Maybe this is what you deserve. Maybe you're the problem. But you're not the problem. The problem is that you've been conditioned to prioritize other people's comfort over your own dignity. You've been taught that setting boundaries is rude, that saying no is selfish, that standing up for yourself makes you difficult, and so you stay quiet. You tolerate, you justify, and you suffer. But here's what changes everything. People don't respect what they can easily cross. They respect resistance. They respect consistency. They respect the quiet, unmistakable signal that says this far, and no further. And that signal doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to be aggressive. The most powerful boundaries are the ones delivered calmly. The ones that don't ask for permission. The ones that don't apologize. The ones that simply state what is and isn't acceptable, and then move forward without negotiation. Let me ask you something, and I want you to really think about this. Who was the first person that started disrespecting you? And what boundary did you stay silent about? Was it a parent who dismissed your feelings? A friend who made you feel small? A partner who ignored your needs? A boss who took advantage of you? Whoever it was, there was a moment. A specific moment where a line was crossed and you said nothing. And that moment set the pattern for every relationship that followed. Because your brain learned that staying silent keeps the peace. That tolerating disrespect avoids conflict. That being flexible makes you likable. But it doesn't. It makes you convenient. It makes you the person people turn to when they need something, and the person they overlook when it's time to give respect. Setting a boundary isn't aggression, it's clarity. It's saying, calmly and without emotion, that doesn't work for me. It's saying, I'm not available for that. It's saying nothing at all and simply walking away when someone crosses a line. Because sometimes, the most powerful response to disrespect is silence. Not the silence of tolerance, but the silence of withdrawal. The silence that says, I don't need to argue with you. I just won't be here for this. And that silence speaks louder than any argument ever could. Because it shows that your boundaries aren't up for debate. They're not negotiable. They simply are. And people will adjust, or they won't. And if they don't, you'll know exactly who they are. Here's the reality. Most people don't disrespect you because they don't like you. They disrespect you because you've made it easy. You've made it comfortable. You've absorbed the discomfort so they don't have to feel it. And as long as you keep doing that, nothing will change. But the moment you stop, the moment you let the discomfort sit with them instead of absorbing it yourself, everything shifts. You don't have to announce it. You don't have to make a scene. You just stop participating in your own disrespect. You stop over-explaining. You stop justifying. You stop tolerating. And you start moving through the world like someone who knows their worth isn't up for debate. So here's what I want you to understand. Respect doesn't start with other people. It starts with you. It starts the moment you decide that how people treat you matters. That your comfort matters. That your boundaries matter. And it continues every single time you enforce those boundaries without apology, without explanation, without negotiation. You don't have to be loud. You don't have to be mean. You just have to be consistent. And consistency is what builds respect. Not words, not explanations, not being nice. Just the quiet, unwavering truth that you will not tolerate what diminishes you. And the people who can't respect that, let them go. Because respect isn't something you beg for. It's something you require. And the moment you start requiring it, you'll stop attracting people who don't know how to give it.